Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming to our session. I'm just about to share my slides. There we go. Yeah, thank you for coming. Today we'll be talking about tracking OER awareness and adoption in U.S. higher education and K-12 classrooms. This work comes from our most recent national survey of teachers and faculty that we performed in the spring this year. So I'll be going through some of our research background, the survey details, then jumping into the actual results, and then conclusions with hopefully enough time for quick question and answers if there are any. So first and foremost, I'm Julia Seaman. I'm the Director of Research at Bayview Analytics. Also on the conference is Jeff Seaman, who will be monitoring our chat. He's the Director of Bayview Analytics. Bayview Analytics is a consulting group that focuses on survey and statistical research, specifically within education, where we have over 2 decades of experience in survey design, with really our biggest project being the one that I'll be presenting today. So a little more information on that is that we have, almost now way over a decade of research on OER awareness. And so we've been doing almost annual surveys in higher education since 2009 and the same in K-12 in 2017. And so these surveys touched upon OER awareness, OER adoption, digital curriculum decisions, and other things surrounding the educational mindset that goes into OER awareness. And so our most recent report, which will be the focus of the results today, covers the 2023-2024 academic school year. And those reports were released September 5th. And so all the information I'm presenting today is in those reports. There's one for higher ed and one for K-12. And one thing we want to make sure is to thank our sponsors. The projects are supported by the William and Flora Hewlett Foundation, OLC, and then previously Alfred P. Sloan and Kaplan. So these surveys, as I mentioned, really are focused on OER. The goals for both of them is to understand the role of OER in higher education and K-12. So that does specifically mean that we are quantifying the perceptions and awareness of OER, including open licensing, which we are, for example, are using Creative Commons. It also means that because we are able to get in front of these teachers and faculty, that we do spend a lot of other survey questions on other topics. And while that's not a focus of our work today, we will have links to some of those other research that we have, and that's also in our reports. The main respondents for our surveys are administrators, faculty, teachers, chief academic officers. We ensure that our surveys are nationally representative for geography as well as type of school. So the survey itself was fielded April 2024 for both higher education and K-12 faculty and teachers. We received 3,421 faculty completed surveys, and that covers all 50 states plus DC and the Virgin Islands. For K-12, it's a little lower with 1,377 teacher respondents, and that covers 48 seats plus DC. So we have a very good representative sample of these teachers and faculty from the US. One thing for this session is that I'm going to go into a little detail about OER specifically and how we measure it. So one thing is that as we've been doing this, as I mentioned, for over a decade, we really need to standardize how we asked about OER, defined OER, and analyzed the results. And so what we have done is we've used the same question year over year, which allows us to examine the trends and changes. And we've also used the same definitions, and these definitions come from the Hewlett Foundation, and they are presented to the survey respondents as they take them. And so I'm just showing you what we are using in our survey. These are very common definitions as well, but just in case you're interested in those details. And so one thing that is actually not as straightforward as you may think is how do you actually measure OER awareness? And so what I'm showing here is a screenshot of the question. If you got our survey online, this is how it would show up. It's we ask the respondent specifically, how aware are you of open educational resources, OER? And then we provide that definition. The respondent choices can vary from I am not aware to all the way I am very aware, with 5 different options for them to choose from. But really, can we trust the answers about their OER awareness directly from this question? And so some of this comes from the fact that, as we know, and I'm sure many of you are aware, is that OER is not just the material itself, it does also incorporate a Creative Commons and open license component as a part of its definition. It's not just free material, it's open free material. And that openness is usually defined by a Creative Commons license, but other open licensing as well. So what we do in our survey is we actually combine responses to our the faculty or teachers aware of Creative Commons as well as OER awareness to have what we're calling the measured OER awareness. And this is the statistics that we are presenting when we're showing OER awareness trends. This means that we have very high confidence that the respondents are really aware of OER. They're aware of both there are materials labeled OER as well as those materials come with a Creative Commons license. So just wanted to make sure and go into a little detail about that. This is also covered in our report as well. All right, before jumping into the OER awareness results that we got this year, I'm doing a little background into what the classrooms actually look like. And so specifically looking into how digital are the classrooms, both in K-12 and higher ed. So one thing we see is teaching modality. And so that's wondering if the classes are fully face-to-face or to fully online or some combination. And what we see is there's a very big difference between K-12 and higher education. In K-12, 9 in 10 classes are all in person. The entire year, all instruction, all students are presented in person. 10%, 11% of the classes, the teachers responded that there was some portion of something that was not in person. That could mean one class, one student, one subject, or perhaps the entire class was all remote. But there's overwhelmingly in K-12, all instruction is done in person. This contrasts quite a bit to what we see in higher education, where there's a big group of faculty who are saying they're teaching fully online or blended or hybrid, though fully face-to-face classes still are the majority options available for faculty. And so very interesting to know. And then one thing to know in this, because we've been asking this question for a few years now, is that we know K-12 instruction is basically back to its pre-pandemic level, and it's been consistent almost immediately post-pandemic. Higher education, on the other hand, has not gone back to its pre-pandemic level, where 95% of the courses were fully face-to-face. So there's been an adoption and sort of new equilibrium in higher education that has included these online and blended courses in digital formats. If we look specifically at materials formats, here we're asking about what format that's required textbook is being offered to students. Note this is not the format the students are using, it's just the format that's being offered because we're asking the faculty themselves, not about the student use. And what is really interesting is that despite the fact that the teaching modality is very different in K-12 and higher ed, the format used for textbooks and presumably other course materials is much more similar and much more leaning towards digital. And so that's the purple, and then purple and red are digital options provided. And so the print-only option of a textbook is very limited. It's slightly more common in K-12 at 19% versus the 8% in higher ed, but overwhelmingly students are offered digital formats. And one thing to note is that that print-only option proportion has been decreasing year over year. So it's moving increasingly digital. And I'm showing both of these because OER materials are primarily digital materials. And so digital adoption, digital use is a way in general is a way to sort of understand how OER may be able to fit into classroom in K-12 and higher education. So I'm going to jump into our higher education results. And so starting with our licensing awareness, what we see is that the majority of faculty are aware at some level for all three licensing types that we asked about. So this is copyright, public domain, and Creative Commons. And so as you might expect, copyright is known a lot more than public domain, which is known more than Creative Commons. And so you can see that by the total number of that blue bar, which are the very aware, decreasing, or that gray bar, which is the unaware, increasing. So it is interesting, but it is all three licensing types in higher education are pretty well known. So if we jump into our OER awareness for 2023-2024, we see that over half of the faculty are aware of OER. And so that measurement is what we combine the blue, red, and purple, the very aware, aware, and somewhat aware categories. And so it is over half of faculty, so more than 1 in 2 faculties are aware at some level. It also is interesting to note that 1/3 of faculty are unaware of OER, so that's that green portion, 32%. And that also means that they're unaware of, like, even though it's a name recognition. So if they've heard of it, that would be in that gray category. So it is still something that there's a lot of faculty out there in higher education who don't know about it, haven't heard about it, hasn't like gone into the thinking about course materials. So when we look at our trends for year over year, what we see is that while the OER awareness remains above 50%, it did not actually gain compared to last year. And this was the first year that we've seen a drop in OER awareness in higher education. We don't know exactly the causes of the drop, and that's a really good research question that we'll be pursuing this year and for the next survey. And one thing is, we do know that the drop is not, it still remains about 50%, and it was just back to the level it was 2 years ago. So we did look a little into our data and the faculty and institutional demographics, and we did see that this drop in awareness was sort of universal. There was no single type of faculty or type of institution that was leading this. So this seems to be a pretty universal trend across all higher education faculty. However, with that said, while it is a drop, it is still quite a large number of faculty who are aware. It's still over 1 in 2 faculty. It's still a very high level of awareness for anything, but it does lead to some questions about how to think about OER awareness and OER initiatives and advocates and what they can do to continue, or at least make sure this trend doesn't continue in the next years. We also measure OER use by asking faculty, do they use any OER materials as a required or supplemental materials across any of their courses? Note that this is asking about any OER material, not necessarily textbooks. And what we see is that 41% of faculty do report using OER materials, either as required or supplemental. And that while this metric did also drop slightly, it did not drop as much as the OER awareness. It still remains that 1 in 4 faculty use OER materials as a required material in their courses last year. Okay, so moving on to K-12, it'll be presented in basically the same format, so hopefully easy to orient yourself. One thing you'll note is that K-12 results that I'm showing are generally lower than higher education. That's something that will be consistent throughout the data that I show. And so for K-12 teachers, their licensing awareness does remain above 50% for all three types, but varies much more widely, and especially is much less known for Creative Commons than the other 2 licensing types that we asked about. So we see that just over 50% of teachers are aware of Creative Commons, while it's closer to 80 and 90% for public domain and copyright. When we move into OER awareness, we do see that over half of the faculty, or sorry, over half of the K-12 teachers, 55%, that green chunk of the pie chart, are unaware of OER, even that name recognition. But we do see that 1/3 of the teachers are aware, so that blue, red, and purple categories combined. And what's really interesting, that the largest group of awareness is that aware category, the red category. There's also an additional 13% of teachers who have heard of OER but don't quite understand what it is or how it may be used. When we look at this in its trends, what we see is this it was actually a growth compared to all the previous years, and it's the highest level we've ever measured. So this is about 1/3 of teachers in K-12 are aware of OER, um, and it is a continued growth from what we've seen, and actually may hopefully for OER advocates may be a continued trend from the post-pandemic period. Uh, There are, however, you can notice that there's been minimal changes, especially to that blue, very aware category. So it seems like teachers are becoming aware of OER, but maybe not necessarily moving into feeling very confident about what it is in K-12 over the last few years. We also have started asking teachers about their OER use. And so here we see that 1 in 3 teachers, also a similar level to the level of awareness, are using OER as a required or supplemental material. It's most commonly being used in K-12 as supplemental materials, and this is something that we see reflected in the comments as well, where teachers are finding that they have sort of required courseware, required work that they have to use for their materials, but they're able to pull in OER as a way to um, provide independent study or extra emphasis on different concepts for their classrooms or specific students as well. Okay, so that sort of wraps up a lot of the data I'm showing, but hopefully we'll be able to contextualize it a bit. And some of it, which I find really interesting, is because we're asking the same questions in both K-12 and higher education, we're actually able to compare these trends across all these grade levels. And so, as I mentioned, K-12 metrics are always and have always been lower than higher education for OER. We see that the OER awareness is almost double in higher education. However, it's really interesting that the use of OER is actually much closer between K-12 and higher education. And we do see that that is primarily through the use of supplemental materials for OER. So yeah, there's it's a lot of data that I presented, and so happy to discuss or ask answer any questions. But one thing that we're looking forward to, and in our research, is really sort of understanding the future of OER. For both higher education and K-12, we really want to know, can OER awareness continue to grow? Will it grow? What sort of are the factors and levers that are affecting OER awareness for these teachers and faculty? Specifically in higher education, we know there are quite a few initiatives around OER, both knowledge-based and also like actual supplemental use support initiatives. And so wondering if the loss of OER awareness may indicate that OER initiatives could benefit from new tactics. And then, of course, there's always the alternative to OER, these commercial options, which have been growing and becoming more digital, more OER-like in some metrics as well. So how will the commercial options continue to compete with OER, especially in higher education? For K-12, one thing that we're really interested in is how can the teachers help prepare students for the OER and digital courseware that's being used in college? Well, I note that it's not as different in K-12 to higher education for the format of the materials. The modality and format of the classroom itself is quite a bit different, and that has quite a few implications for student success, student preparedness, and how K-12 and especially high school teachers can help their students prepare to be able to be successful in higher education. Okay. So if you're interested in more data, we have our reports, which were published early September. They're available on our website or a PDF download for free, released under Creative Commons, both the higher ed and K-12 reports, if you're interested at the link. We also do a lot of what we call short reports, research briefs, other infographics. And so we've recently released one on student readiness for higher education, where we've asked both um, K-12 teachers, administrators, and higher education faculty and administrators, are students ready for higher education, and comparing their results. We've done some reports on OER and cost savings, and then we've looked into the actual faculty demographics of OER users. Very soon, we'll be putting out a report on the faculty preferences for inclusive access billing, and that will hopefully be followed up this year when we're including student voices as well in our survey. And then we have questions from this year on AI perceptions and use by K-12 and higher education too. If you'd like to be notified for any of our reports or research, please sign up for our mailing list, or if you want to ask questions or meet with us, we're happy to discuss as well. And those are both through our link. Yeah, so open to questions. I saw some chat coming in, so uh, happy to answer that, or if anyone wants to go on voice or video. Okay. Yeah, so the survey questions, the they are available and happy to share with you. Please reach out if you'd like the complete survey. We also have the questions that are in the report are provided in the appendix. Um, we send out, so the question is, how do we disseminate the survey to groups? So we send these out by email to a published list of teachers and faculty, as well as prior people who have signed up to be part of our research. So we are doing basically like a census, going out and just sending out and hoping as many people will respond. We do offer incentives for the time it takes for faculty administrators to fill out the survey as well, because we know it's not, uh, they're very busy and have a lot of other things to think about. Yeah, thank you everyone for coming. Again, if you have any other questions, please reach out to us. This research, all the results are in the reports. Feel free to use them and look at them yourself. And yeah, we'll be around, and we hope you have a great conference.